Had another mass shooting. This one was in Texas. By the time I make this video, maybe there's another one. I don't know. It's really hard to keep up with. I want to make this video for people who do not understand the correlation of video games and real world violence. Maybe they're looking for answers. Because right now we need something to blame. We need somewhere to point the finger, and we need to understand this. Humans need to understand why. We have some officials in Texas saying, we have no idea what the motives are. And that, I feel like, is just as ignorant to say as video games are to blame. The reason that I'm really making this is because I've been seeing some people on the internet who have been saying, my parents say that I'm going to be the next school shooter because I'm an introvert and I play a lot of video games. Those seem to be the two things that a lot of people who don't play video games think make a killer. And I want to tell you right now that there is absolutely no scientific evidence for this. This is just a position of ignorance, and it can do a lot more harm than good because you are taking something, video games, something that is a pastime, something that is an escape, something that is a fun activity, something that is a way for people who are introverted or non-introverted to connect with their friends on the internet and talk. Maybe this is the only way that they feel comfortable communicating. Maybe they have a communication disorder. You're taking their thing, their hobby, and you're demonizing it. And you're taking it away from them because you've looked at you've looked at the games and you said, okay, I can see these games. They're violent. They run around and they punch things. They push buttons on their controller. They shoot things. People explode. That is not making them killers. When I grew up in an evangelical household, and my mother did not like video games. She was very much, and if she didn't like D&D, like I would never have been allowed to have this in my house. I've got it now. But I would have never been able, like if I had that in my house, I would have been dead because that's for demons and video games are for evil and violence and that sort of thing. But the thing is like she would be like, no, you cannot play this video game. It's violent. And then she would buy me a Western style revolver and be like, here, go put on a cowboy hat. Here's a revolver. Go outside, pretend to shoot your sister. Have fun. And that was totally normal because we have a gun culture and it is seen as completely harmless to give a kid a toy gun and let them go play. That's something we understand. We've done that since the beginning of America. That's totally normal and acceptable. You understand it, I understand it, and you know that if you give someone a toy gun and let them go play around, that is not going to turn them into a murderer. They understand that it is fantasy. If they happen to grow up and kill someone, it's not because you gave them a toy gun. It's because they had something else in their life. They are broken somewhere in here. There were other catalysts, crime of passion. Maybe it was a planned thing. Who knows? But it was not because you gave them a gun and said, go play, go shoot your brother and sister with this toy gun. It's the same exact thing with video games, and science bears this out as well. If you look at all the different articles out there, there's so many different articles. I can't find an article that correlates violence in the real world to violence in video games. I cannot find one. So there has to be something else going on in our culture that's creating this. And it's a real shame because the people that do not understand video games are the first to point fingers at video games. And that's very harmful for people who find solace in video games. Maybe they're violent, but this is the type of entertainment that they have found maybe a community, and they're a part of it. So please do not take that away from them. There's absolutely no science that says that it makes them a danger to anyone. Some of the research that set out to look into video games actually found that video games reduced crime rates. Because it turns out that when you have a community of people you can joke around with and you start to have some fun with people online, you feel a little bit less empty. But it goes beyond that. A lot of that's just the fact that if more people are focused on games, then they're not out committing crimes and getting themselves into trouble and stuff like that. So we're going to look at the deeper cultural implications. But first, I want to show this.
Why and how is being looked at right now. And I'll tell you this, thousands of more leads are being looked at right now because we haven't answered all the questions. We haven't gotten into the why. Okay, we know the individual was also into cyber gaming in that regard, and group gaming in that regard. So we've got a lot of questions are out there, and we're seeking answers, but we've got an obligation. We'll continue to update you when we find something out.
But just right there in that video, he implicated games without just off the top of his head. He's looking for answers, and he just throws out, well, we know he played games, and we're looking at a bunch of other cases for people who may play games. Like they're starting to draw correlations, and that is an extremely dangerous and toxic thing, because the people who are pushing back against those who play games are going to create more mental issues. We don't need that. So please, I'm begging you, if you're someone who has grounded your kids for playing games, or has told your kids that, hey, games are violent and they're going to make you violent, please look into some research and understand that this is something that you didn't grow up with, but it's similar to a lot of other things. Do you know when they first made soccer in England, in the UK, over 100 years ago, the people on the top, the lords and the upper crust, they were like, this is a barbaric activity. It makes people angry because people would get together on the field and their emotions would be heightened, and they would, the audience, the crowd would fight. There would be hooligans and stuff like that. So they were like, no, we cannot have soccer. So it was something they didn't understand. It was new. They saw it as childish and stupid. And I see the exact same thing happen when it comes to video games. It's new. People who did not grow up with it don't understand it. So don't be that person. Sit down and listen to your kids. I assure you that there's not any games that are as violent as the Bible. Let's talk about the culture that really makes this all possible in America, because this is a very unique situation when you look at the entire rest of the world. The rest of the world has video games. In fact, some of the most, warped and violent material I've ever seen in my entire life came from Japan. Some of this stuff is beyond comprehension. I don't know why I even saw it, but it came from Japan, and Japan has no gun violence. None. When it comes to atrocities, they have one for about every few hundred that we have. America has had more mass atrocities in 6 months than Japan has in about 70 years or more. 6 months for 70 years. So this is not just the fact that Japan does not have guns. The rest of the world plays violent games. Japan has extremely violent games. Japan has very violent manga and artwork. The rest of the world has violent artwork. And it's not happening on the same scale. So what is different about America? Why? Well, is it because we have gun culture? Well, speaking of Japan again, because we're going to reference them a lot, they're a very handy cultural reference because they're nearly the opposite of America. But if you look at Japan, Japan actually has gun culture. Even though it's nearly impossible to purchase a gun, toy guns are fine. And you can buy toy guns that look really interesting, like cap guns that look a lot like the real versions, and they have awesome replicas and stuff like that, and there's an entire culture around it. And a lot of the people who buy them, they'll even look at tactical magazines and dress up with like the camo and have all the extra clips and stuff like that, and they'll have fun with it. A lot of the Yakuza, they will use toy guns because the sentences for using real guns are just ridiculous. So they'll use toy guns to intimidate people. So there's gun culture there. It's not as big, obviously, but there are people who get into it and have a lot of fun with it. So it's not just the gun culture that's creating this. It's a combination of things. So here's what I think has really come together in America and made sort of a special brew, if you will. So in America, we're always told about the American dream, how you can do anything. This is the land of opportunity. And a lot of people who are growing up are looking around them and saying, like, I don't have any opportunity. The opportunity that my parents had and stuff like that, I don't have it. I can't go out and buy a house. I'm not going to be able to get a decent job. If I want to work, I'm going to have to move very far away because the pay will not even let me work in the same city that I live in, or whatever, I have to live like outside of the city that I work in. People are looking at this, and inequality is going through the roof, especially during COVID, because during COVID we had inflation go up, but the prices went up way higher than that. A lot of people are pointing at the government and blaming them, and yes, inflation is rough, it is bad, but not many people are pointing their fingers at the corporations and the CEOs and stuff, the people who actually decide to raise the prices while not paying you anymore. They raise the prices far more than the inflation rate. And when people yell and scream, they do the same thing. They go, well, it's just the government. So they have priced things so high that people are going to have to start going without. And a lot of people look around at this and they're like, oh, we're going to have to start going without. And they look at their futures and then they don't know what to do. They start to feel this uncertainty because they've been sold a bill of goods that is, you can do anything. And then they're like, no, I can't do anything. People want to have some power and some agency in their life. And we live in a place that's like the land of freedom. At least that's what we're told. And that's why people run around with guns all the time. They're like, it's my freedom to hold guns, right? Is that what it's about? Is it about your freedom to hold guns? Maybe it's about your freedom to stay in line and continue doing the status quo, but at least feel like you have a little bit of power because you can put on your tactical outfit and you can put on your goggles and all of your, all your stuff and your pockets and your vest, and you can stand there and hold your AR-15 and be like, I am tough, I am powerful, do not mess with me, don't come into my neighborhood or I will get you. It's a feeling of power that you are allowed to have. But you know what you're not allowed to have? You're not allowed to have a say in the way business goes. You're not allowed to have a say in the government. That's all controlled by the rich people. The news and stuff that's fed to you, all owned by the rich people. This is not some conspiracy theory nonsense. This is the way it is in America. So the things that you hear come from the rich people. The things that happen in the government, they're there to support you. No, they're not. They are there to support the wealthy people because the wealthy people show up and they say, hey, listen, we know you got elected by the people. We got a big fat stack of cash. Can you resist? And the politician who may have been a good person at one point, they can't resist. So they make a bad choice and become a bad person. And then that's just how that goes when it comes to that part of freedom. So we're like, you know what? At least I'm free to choose where I work. Okay, great. You get to pick between the corporations that you work in. But do you have a say in those corporations? No, because America has done everything they can to squash unions, and we don't really have a lot of cooperatives. A cooperative is when all the employees own and work together in the business, and then they all get a share of the profits. Right now, all of our profits go to a few people at the top of these companies. When you go to work, you go to a totalitarian environment. You have no say over what you wear, what you say, the position of the company. If the company wants to dump sludge in the Amazon rainforest, 5 people at the top are going to say yes or no to that. You have no say in that. You just have to keep coming to work, and you better be on time, and you better show up when the schedule says you're going to be there. If you need to do something, well, that's going to have to be a talk with your boss. You have almost no agency over your life, so you need to take something back. And when the pay is so low that you can barely live, while you have no democracy in your life, you have no freedom. So you take all of that incredibly toxic situation, and then you mix it with this constant preaching in America of like, this is your place, you do whatever you want. Looking at all the cultures across the world, America is all about rugged individualism. It's one of the most selfish cultures to ever exist. So let's compare and contrast that to a place like Japan. Now, in Japan, they have a communal culture. It's almost too strong, but it's a totally different culture, so I want to examine it for a second. From a very early age, when you're like 3 or 4 or 5 years old, you're already taught to start cleaning up after yourself. In the classrooms, you clean the front of the school, you clean the windows. The students do this. They don't do a very good job, but they are being taught discipline, and they are being taught to clean up after themselves. And the reason is because the things that they do, the messes that they make, they are going to be there when someone else is there. So someone else is going to have to deal with their mess or their mistake. So when they're on the subway, don't talk on the phone. That might irritate other people around you who have migraines or whatever. When you are in the store, you don't bother people. You don't they don't do a lot of random chit chat. If you want to do that, you go to a bar and hang out and chit chat. If you're in an elevator, you don't make a lot of noise. You don't wear really strong perfume in Japan because it may make someone else sneeze. You can think about what you want, but you also have to think about how it's going to affect everyone around you. The idea of getting onto like a bus or something and having someone with a boombox or an iPhone that's just blasting music, if you told someone in Japan that happens in America, their head would explode. They would be like, what? What about... Doesn't that bother other people? So they are hyper conscious of how everything affects others around you. But in America, people are like, I'm proud to be a burden. They don't think of it that way because we're taught to just think of ourselves so much. Ourselves and our family. Screw you, I've got mine. That's really the mentality that we have in America. I'm surprised that people are even willing to follow road signs because everyone's screaming about freedom so much. Like, my freedom to run people over. It's like that's where I feel like we are. We've forgotten that our freedoms have to stop at some point. Our freedoms to walk into a place and shoot people stop at other people's freedom to be alive. It's such a basic thing, but it's like, I feel like that part of our culture has allowed people to completely discredit the feelings and the wants and the needs and the lives of others. So you take that with our current situation and the uncertainty and the inequality and just the frustrations of living right now and watching people, watching our future disappear into nothing. Take that and then just let people buy guns and ammo at the same place that they can buy breakfast cereal and motor oil. Perfect. Now we have a wild stew. How do we fix this? Well, there are a few things that we should do, but I mean, you got to fix inequality. That's the most important thing, because the worse that gets, the more violence shows up, and that's throughout history and pretty much any society. The worse it gets for people, the more unrest there is. And right now we have a lot of unrest and a lot of access to guns. We can't go and confiscate everyone's guns. We can't put that cat back into the bag. It's impossible. And if we did, the police officers would not enforce it. And if they did enforce it, they would only enforce it in the minority communities. And that's how it would be. The minorities would lose a lot of their abilities to defend themselves, while the rest of the country really doesn't. So we can't go around confiscating people's guns, but we can do some very simple things. So I have firearms. I'm an American after all. I've got like 40 of them in my truck, I guess. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? Am I doing it right? So anyway, I've got a gun, and I've taken some gun safety courses and a concealed carry. I feel like those gun safety courses that I took should be mandatory for everyone. You shouldn't be able to get a gun until you've taken a gun safety course, because the amount of respect that I have for the firearm after taking those courses it's a totally different level. And the respect for what you can do with that weapon and how you can interact with the world around you, the things you can do, the dangers of messing around with it and stuff like that. It raises your reverence, and also you have to be around other people while you're talking about these guns. So maybe that and some just general training, something to prove that you know how to shoot it and clean it and stuff like that, because these are not toys. But right now, anybody who's 18 in a lot of states can just go in on their birthday, 18 years old, load them up with firearms, get an extended mag, and see you later. So I know that we can't do a lot of these things because people will freak out, but I don't see what's wrong with background checks to check and see, like, hey, have you murdered anybody? Some states may have stuff like that, but like across the nation, like, hey, have you ever, have you been like domestically beating people and stuff like that? I don't know. Like, do you have a history of like tantrums? Do you have any medical conditions we need to know about? Stuff like that. Very simple things. But what you can do at home right now is discuss things with people and talk about, just how they feel. I know things suck. Stop telling people that their generation sucks. Stop telling people that they could afford a house if they stop eating avocado toast and drinking Starbucks. That's all they really have right now. They cannot afford a house. A house is more than 20 times more expensive than when a lot of the boomers and even Gen X bought some of their houses back in the 80s and stuff like that. Well, I guess they would be babies back then. But mostly the boomers got a lot of the houses for crazy deals that we're never going to see again. Maybe if we do, it'll be like after the world ends again and then comes back around the next time. Avocado toast and coffee, that's all some people have. That's their only bit of happiness. Don't take that away from them. That's it. They want to go out and sit in a cafe, and don't make fun of them for that. There's no reason for that. We need more solidarity. A long time ago in America, even people more, a little bit higher up on the ladder, were more willing to pay their taxes, even if they didn't have kids. They wanted to make sure that the kids across the street could go to school, because they know that if the kids across the street go to school in the future, that's going to improve society for everyone. They know that there are things that don't directly benefit them. Maybe they don't want to go out and play on the swing set that's across the street, but that being there means that there are something to do for the kids. And maybe they're not going to climb your fence and try to play around in your big, beautiful oak tree anymore, because now there's a swing set over there. They can go play on that. So things that benefit society as a whole, they benefit you. They benefit all of us. You may not directly see it, but we need solidarity. We need to understand that improving communities around the country for all different groups benefits all of us. And we need to stop letting the rich people tell us to hate each other. And we need to start hating them. The ones who are constantly telling us, oh, it's the black people taking our jobs. And the birth rate of the white people is so low that they're gonna take over. You know how ridiculous that is? They live in a white community and they're told that minorities are taking over. So in order to get to a minority community, they had to drive 2 hours so they could shoot people. They had to drive 2 hours to find those minorities that are taking over the country. That's absurd. They've been told a bunch of nonsense to keep their focus away from where the money's really going. It's coming out of our pockets and going straight to the pockets of the ultra wealthy. Inequality has skyrocketed, and that's a huge thing. We need to focus on these things and try to work together with each other. It doesn't matter if we're black, white, green, Jewish, Christian, gay, I don't care, trans, whatever. Doesn't matter what you are. We need to understand that we are in this together. And we can kill each other and be mad at each other and try to blame video games and blame each other's hobbies, blame the escapes that we have because we don't like them. Or we can actually sit back and look at the science behind things and look at our entire situation from a broader perspective. Because when you really step back and maybe study some other cultures, some that are way backwards from what you may be used to, study what they do, look at the results they get, look at the things that you think maybe are a bit too much, but maybe take some advice from other cultures around the world that have had more success in certain areas. It's ridiculous that it is now more dangerous to be a kid in school than it is to be a cop in this country. Not per capita, but more kids are shot every year in school than police officers are in the line of duty. And those cops in Texas, fuck them. Hope this video helped somebody out there. And I hope that it starts conversations, and I hope that this is something you can send to your family and stuff. Do give it the upvote, please, because that'll make the Google algorithm do things and all that kind of stuff. So if you want other people to see this, push the stupid button so we can do the thing. Yeah. Anyway, I'll see you in the comments. Goodbye.